This video is for business leaders who want a framework for gamifying anything so employees will be more inspired, motivated, and invested in their work. Have you ever seen gamification before? If you did, was it lame? How did that make you feel? How appropriate did you find gamification for the corporate environment? I'm just going to guess that you found it the way I did, to be sort of childish and irrelevant and kind of stupid. However, I'm going to review a book today which goes into this topic very, very well and has changed my mind about at least the applicability through this one single book. So watch to the end of this video for bonus materials that describes a little bit of the similarities between the Octalysis framework that will be described briefly in this video and Dr. Robert Cialdini's 7 Levers of Influence, because there's a lot of similarities, uncanny almost. And also stay to the end for my recommended video on personalized gamification themes to increase motivation in business settings. So let me start by saying that until I read this book or listened to this book, I saw the potential for gamification, but I'd never seen anything that really made it useful. That is, great, gamification exists and can be used even very effectively for behavioral change in organizations and stuff, driving motivation and stuff. But not until this book did I see anything that was really actionable on this topic. I'd read 2 or 3 books previously or listened to 2 or 3 books previously on this topic, but all of them were barely more than useless. It was like, oh, that has some good ideas. I'm still not clear how I could use it or apply it in a business or any other setting. This is the first book that really sort of drove home how to do that, especially because it has a model and a framework attached to it. So Yukai Chou's book is called Actionable Gamification, and it blew me away with its extensive connections and references to many of my favorite books by researchers in psychology, especially around organizational, motivational areas of psychology. So it's interesting because he is not a psychologist. He is a gamification expert. He started from a different point, but he arrived at and well supports using extremely good references. The depth of his knowledge and the fact that he's been able to take that knowledge, which most academics cannot do, and translate it into real world applications in a concrete way. So in short, this book is the most comprehensive and actionable book on how to motivate employees I've ever experienced. Period. I don't say that lightly, and I have read or listened to hundreds of books over the last decade or so. Yeah, okay, the last decade, that would be roughly 500 books. That's not to brag, it's just when you listen, it's much faster. So that's really what it is this book is the best book. And probably if you have one book you want to read about motivating employees in a really truly effective way, I would say this is the book you should read. And you could get away with skipping all the others. Not that there isn't lots of valuable deeper insight in those books, but this is the most applicable one I've ever listened to ever, and it's not even close. So when I say this is including books written by top researchers, including Daniel Kahneman, Jane McGonigal, Daniel Pink, Robert Cialdini, who was previously mentioned, and others, basically a whole bunch of top academics in the area of behavioral change and psychology, not gamification. But quite literally, almost every single, I can only think of one author whose last name was Wu, I think it was. I believe every other single book that he mentioned in this book are books I myself have listened to or read in the past, which is why I'm so impressed, because the list and the credentials of the authors and the books that he refers to is just damn impressive. It means that he knows what he's talking about. So the reason that this book is the best is that, and what I mean by the best is the best of any book on behavioral and organizational change or motivation, that I've ever listened to or read, is that while it's not a light read, it's far more accessible or more in plain English than many of the books that it cites for its own references, the more academic stuff. And unlike virtually all those other books, it clearly describes how to use gamification in particular to create work motivation, workplace culture, and work engagement in your company. So it'll take you and your team some substantial work to actually apply it. It won't be simple. It will take effort. And but with that work and enough thought and enough planning around how to do this, and he goes into that fairly well in this book, you can use his Octalysis framework. And if you do it well, you can make something really great or even good gamification to motivate your team. If you do it well, it'll mop the floor with probably every other organizational change effort on how to inspire others in your company that you have ever implemented. And I'm talking everything else. And this is a big claim, as I said, because I wouldn't have made this claim about a gamification book before this point. I would have referred to Cialdini or Pink or someone else like that. So as a teacher, I'm especially excited about finally having a model for gamification of learning, especially for my youngest students. I come up with sort of fun activities and games, but I've been doing it pretty haphazardly, just around how fun will this be? How much intrinsic motivation will they have? How fun will this be for them to want to try to then take the language, the English attached to it, and actually try to do the activity because what I'm doing is so rewarding for them to experience and watch and participate in. And I've been okay, you know, I've done it on my own and it's been okay. And I've done pretty well, but it's hard and it's pretty random. So his model will make figuring out how to inspire others way easier, and it'll be more systematic in a good way. To me, systemization or process is only good if it has a certain fundamental flexibility and doesn't generate sort of dogma or some version of groupthink. And he specifically warns against these kind of things in the book. So I would say if you want to motivate others to do anything, I would recommend this book above every one of dozens of others I've listened to on the topics of motivation, workplace culture, persuasion, and business leadership, period, full stop. So thank you for watching this far. This is now onto the bonus content, and I've kind of kept this short and vague, otherwise this video would be too long. And that is what struck me immediately about this book when I first started listening to it, and the language he used around what he calls his 8 core drives were so similar to Dr. Robert Cialdini's author of Influence, latest book, and its 7 levers of influence, that they were not exactly identical, but they are covered within it. Basically, to keep it short, I'll just sort of say what they were, not even say all what they were. That'll take too long. So to keep it short, let's just say that not only are the names of Chou's 8 core drives similar to Cialdini's 7 levers of influence, but the core drives use more plain, understandable English to the layperson who doesn't have any background in psychology or academics. And it has that sort of game twist in the language. So that's kind of both fun and also it implies the meaning of the core drives much more clearly than Cialdini's do all on their own. And they still cover every single one of the 7 levers of influence that Cialdini describes within those 8 core drives. And in fact, there's 9 if you include what he calls sensation, which is not an actionable drive, but he notes it as a drive. So the next thing is that I'll leave a link in the description of this video to go into the 7 levers of influence, because you may not know what those are. And if you are in business, if you need to persuade anybody to do anything, but especially in marketing, you should know who Cialdini is. when you read that book or when you learn more about what those 7 levers of influence, you'll see it everywhere because it is the foundation, the architecture of modern sales, especially on the internet, but really everywhere. And that comes from Cialdini's work. So you can, like I said, I'll leave the link to my first of actually 7 videos, 1 for each lever of influence, if you want to geek out deeper into those and learn what those are and how to apply them, but not to the same degree that this book helps you apply them. So that's it for that. And except my recommended video for today, which is creating intrinsic motivation with personalized gamification. So this sort of goes in the same direction, but it was inspired by a different book I recently listened to by Katie Milkman called How to Change, which just touched on gamification, but in a way that was important enough that I covered it in a video too. So please share this video with anyone who, like me, thinks gamification is, or who thought, but anyone who you know who thinks that gamification is childish, ineffective, or unscientific, as well as inappropriate to use in a corporate setting. This book will change your mind, especially if you have enough background on the science and the people that he talks about to know that these are the heavy hitters of that industry, of that field, of those fields. So it really is, in a word, kick ass, and probably the best book I've ever listened to that covers most of all the things I do in my neurocognitive leadership practice. So that's it for Crush It Club 279, How to Motivate Employees, Book Review, Actionable Gamification. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.